When you ignore someone who once had your full attention, you don't just withdraw communication, you withdraw power. You take back the energy that once fueled his ego. You interrupt a pattern that made him feel secure in your availability. That moment of absence becomes louder than any words you quote and beyond and old ever say. Because when you stop chasing, you force him to face what he's been avoiding, his own emotional responsibility. See, ignoring him isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about refusing to beg for what should have been freely given. You are not playing a game, you are breaking one. The kind of game where you lose yourself piece by piece just to keep someone else comfortable. The silence you create isn't cruelty. It's correction. It's the universe saying enough. When a man feels your absence, he's confronted with the truth he never valued your presence. That realization doesn't come through arguments, explanations, or tears. It comes when he feels the void where your energy used to be. And that's what people underestimate, how powerful your absence is when your presence was once his emotional fuel. Most people think ignoring someone is passive. It's not. It's one of Bembidare's strongest acts of discipline. Because you re-choosing not to feed your impulses, you re-choosing to rise above your craving for attention, your need to be understood, your desire to fix things. You are no longer reacting to his inconsistency. You are standing still, firmly in your value, while he rambles to make sense of the silence. And here, as the truth, when you ignore him completely, something shifts. The balance of power tilts. The one who was certain of your affection now becomes uncertain of his own significance. His ego, once inflated by your pursuit, starts to deflate in the quiet. That's when he begins to remember what he took for granted. That's when he starts to wonder, why isn't she calling? Why isn't she reacting? The silence becomes a mirror reflecting his own indifference. But listen carefully, this isn't about making him chase. That S still dependency. This is Abu Ebar and making you free. You ignore not to manipulate, but to detach from the chaos that once controlled you. You ignore to regain clarity, to recenter your worth where it belongs inside you. Because when you no longer crave his validation, you start to attract respect. You start to project confidence, peace, and stability, the qualities that magnetize the right kind of love. There's something extraordinary about emotional control. It terrifies people who once thrived on your reaction. They realize they can control what doesn't respond. And that's when they either rise to meet your level or and fall away. Either way, you win. Because you no longer operating from desperation, you operating from strength. Ignoring him is not revenge, it's revelation. It reveals what he truly feels, what you truly deserve, and what the relationship truly was. If he comes back, it's not because of yo ben biarsen, silence it. Because your silence forced him to grow. And if he doesn't you have proven to yourself that your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's attention. That S maturity, that S freedom. The world will try to convince you that caring less means losing. But in truth, caring wisely is how you win. You don't chase what's uncertain, you attract what's aligned. You don't prove your worth, you live it. You don't explain your value, you embody it. So ignore him not out of anger, but out of clarity. Let your silence speak the language of self-respect. Let your absence become the lesson he never expected to learn. Because when you stop feeding someone else's ego, they finally meet your essence. And that's when everything changes. When you ignore him completely, you stop negotiating your value. You stop asking for what should already be obvious. You stop pouring into someone who never brought what NR to your fire. That's the moment you reclaim your power, not through noise, but through stillness. And as he wonders what happened, you will already know. Nothing happened to you. Everything happened for you. You evolved. You grew stronger. You became the one thing no one can manipulate a person who knows their worth. So don't text, don't chase, don't explain, just rise. Because when you ignore him completely, you don't lose him, you lose your weakness. And that is the most powerful transformation there is. Detachment is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of control. It's the ability to feel everything deeply, yet remain unmoved by the chaos that once dictated your peace. People mistake detachment for indifference, as if strength means you stop caring. But that's not it. True detachment is caring from a place of calm, not desperation. It's love without addiction, connection without control, and empathy without self-abandonment. When you learn detachment, you begin to understand how much of your suffering was self-inflicted, not because of what others did, but because of how tightly you tried to hold on. You clung to outcomes. You obsessed over responses. You built your peace around someone else's unpredictability. And that's why it hurt. Because your emotional stability was built on ground that could move at any moment. But the moment you detach, everything changes. You begin to see reality for what it is, not what you want it to be. You stop begging people to act right. You stop explaining your worth. You stop reacting to disrespect. Instead, you stand still calm, centered, grounded in truth. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Because control isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself when others lose control around you. There's a deep power and restraint. The one who doesn't need to respond immediately. The one who doesn't chase validation. The one who can sit in uncertainty without collapsing, that's the person who owns the dynamic. The world bends around those who don't rush to prove their worth. Because confidence does shout. It doesn't chase. It waits. It observes. It chooses. Detachment is not an escape from life. It's as the gateway to living it fully. When you stop being consumed by what people think or how they treat you, you finally have space to focus on growth, purpose, and peace. You start to build your world around values, not emotions, around standards, not reactions, around alignment, not attachment. And here's the paradox: when you detach, everything you used to chase starts to come towards you. Because people can feel it. They feel that you were no longer begging for love, approval, or attention, and you've become the source, not the seeker. Be kind without being weak, to forgive without reopening wounds, and to love without losing yourself. It's not about running away from life. It's about standing in the middle of it, unafraid of loss, unafraid of change, and completely rooted in who you are. So remember, this silence doesn't make you powerful. Stillness does. Ignoring someone doesn't give you control. Understanding yourself does. Detachment is not the end of connection. It's the beginning of freedom. Because when you no longer cling to what you can control, you finally control sense. The only thing that ever mattered yourself. And that is true power. Attention is the currency of power in every connection. Whoever commands it leads. Whoever chases it follows. It's not about manipulation. It's about awareness. Because what you focus on grows, and what you starve of energy fade. Most people lose themselves in relationships because they forget this. They hand over their attention too freely, too quickly, too desperately. And when you give someone constant attention, you give them influence over your emotions. The truth is, attention is not just presence, it's power. It's the energy that fuels desire, validation, and attachment. When you fixate on someone, you make them the center of your emotional world. You start to measure your worth by how much of their time you receive. But here's the paradox: the more you chase someone's attention, the less they value yours. People always crave what they feel they could lose, not what's always guaranteed. So control your attention. Guard it like your peace depends on it, because it does. When you choose where your focus goes, you reclaim your power. You stop reacting to mixed signals. You stop overanalyzing silence. You stop giving endless mental energy to people who treat you like an option. Attention is not affection, it's investment. And not everyone deserves your investment. When you control your attention, you become unpredictable, not in a manipulative way, but in a powerful one. Because now you are not governed by emotion. You are led by intention. You decide when to engage, when to observe, and when to walk away. You begin to see that attention isn't something you owe it as, something you allocate wisely, that as emotional intelligence in motion. The moment you pull back your attention, dynamics shift. Suddenly, the person who took you for granted starts to feel your absence. They wonder where your energy went. They sense the void not because you were gone, but because your focus no longer feeds their ego. That silence becomes unsettling for them. They realize the power they felt was never in them. It was always in the attention you gave. Attention is a mirror. When you direct it towards someone, you reflect their importance back to them. But when you withdraw it, they see the truth that their significance was never self-made, it was borrowed from your focus. That's why emotional detachment feels like a storm to those who depended on your attention to fey. Valuable. But mastering attention isn't about playing games. It's about choosing yourself. It's about realizing that not everyone is worthy of your mental space. You can build peace while feeding chaos. You can find clarity while focusing on confusion. You can heal when your attention is constantly trapped in someone else's inconsistency. Control your attention and you control your emotions. Control your emotions and you control your life. That is the sequence most people ignore because they read too busy reacting, busy overthinking, too busy giving their energy to people who haven't earned it. Real strength is not in confrontation, it's in the ability to stay composed while everyone else tries to provoke you. When you are no longer addicted to attention, you become magnetic. People sense that you reground not desperate. They sense that your validation doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being stable. That's what truly attracts respect. Because in a world where everyone is shouting for attention, the one who remains silent in control stands out the most. The one who controls their attentio, controls the tempo of the relationship. They decide when connection happens, when space is created, and when boundaries are drawn. You don't have to chase anyone, you simply need to redirect your focus toward growth, peace, and purpose. Because when your attention is fixed on your own evolution, you stop orbiting around people who aren't moving with you. Attention reveals what you value. So if your thoughts are always about someone who brings you confusion, your attention becomes an investment in your own unhappiness. Redirect it, pull it back. Place it on something that multiplies your STRS and angst instead of draining it. Because the energy you give to worrying about someone could be the same energy that builds your next breakthrough. When someone realizes they no longer control your focus, they lose leverage. They lose the comfort of knowing they can pull your emotions anytime they want. That's when they start to respect you, not because you ignored them, but because you became untouchable. Your energy no longer dances to their rhythm, it follows your own. So don't beg for attention, don't compete for it. Command it by mastering your focus. When you no longer chase, you shift the power dynamic instantly. Your silence becomes louder than your words, your absence becomes more meaningful than your presence, and your calm becomes the loudest message of all. Attention is the purest form of control, not over others, but over yourself, because the one who decides what deserves the WIIR focus decides the direction of their life. And that's not just how you win in relationships, that is how you win in everything. So remember this, stop feeding situations that starve your spirit. Withdraw your attention from what drains you, give it to what grows you. Because the one who controls their attention doesn't just control the relationship, they control their destiny. When you stop responding, you are not being cruel. You being conscious. You retaking back the power you once gave too freely. Ignoring isn't about hurting someone, it's about healing yourself. It's about recognizing that your attention is sacred, your peace is priceless, and not everyone deserves access to it. Because when you constantly explain, argue, or try to prove your worth, you drain the very energy that keeps you grounded. Ignoring is not coldness, it's clarity. It's choosing silence when your voice no longer brings understanding. Most people think that ignoring someone is an act of revenge, but revenge feeds on anger. And anger still keeps you tied to the person you trying to detach from. Ignoring, on the other hand, is freedom. It's the quiet realization that you no longer owe anyone your reaction. You are no longer a puppet to their moods, their games, their inconsistency. You are free not because they changed, but because you finally decided to. Reclaiming your emotional energy begins the moment you stop chasing closure from people who thrive on confusion. It begins when you stop howling up for conversations that go nowhere, when you stop investing time in people who only understand your worth when you pull away. Ignoring is not weakness. It's emotional discipline. It's the strength to walk away without announcing it, without making a scene, without needing validation. Real strength doesn't seek to be seen, it's felt. Silence has a strange power. It unsettles the ones who used to control you with inconsistency. It exposes the truth of who really had power all along. When you withdraw your energy, they notice. The calls stop. The texts slow. The attention fades and and suddenly they realize what they took for granted, your emotional presence. That's when the shift happens, because your absence speaks louder than your arguments ever could. But ignoring about manipulation, it's not about making them chase or feel regret. It's about detaching your peace from their behavior. You were saying, I will not be emotionally available to someone who treats my care as optional. That's not ego. That is self-respect, the kind of self-respect that says, my peace will no longer be sacrificed for temporary attention. When you ignore, you redirect, you stop. Pouring your energy into someone who depletes you, and you pour it back into yourself. You start to feel lighter, clearer. You begin to remember who you were before you started shrinking yourself to fit into their inconsistency. That's the beauty of reclaiming your emotional energy. You start to reboot and ild what you lost while trying to be understood. People who thrive on control hate silence because it removes their grip. They can provoke you if you don't react. They can manipulate you if you don't engage. Ignoring teaches them, and more importantly, it teaches you that not every battle deserves your participation. Sometimes the most powerful move is to walk away quietly and let time expose what words never could. You see, emotional energy is your life force. Every thought, every reaction, every word, it's energy. And if you were constantly pouring that energy into fixing people, explaining your value, or chasing closure, you will find yourself empty. Ignoring about withdrawing, love it about protecting what left of it. It's the conscious act of saying, I choose peace over chaos. I choose clarity over confusion. I choose me. In that silence, something extraordinary pens. You begin to heal. You start to see things differently. The things you once tolerated start to look intolerable. The attention you once craved starts to feel unnecessary. Because when you reclaim your energy, you start to understand that what you were looking for in others was always within you. And yes, people may call you cold. They may accuse you of changing. But what they don't understand is that peace changes your priorities. You no longer find thrill in drama. You no longer find meaning in constant explanations. You don't chase. You attract, because your energy is no longer leaky and RNG through reaction. Ignoring is not indifference, it's alignment. It's aligning your focus with your values, your emotions, with your purpose. It's no longer fighting for a connection that fights against your peace. You are not punishing anyone, you are protecting your spirit. You are saying, I do unto me my part. The rest is not mine to fix. The world often glorifies reaction, quick replies, emotional outbursts, endless pursuit. But the strongest people are the ones who can stay silent in chaos. Because silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've stopped caring in ways that cost you our sanity. When you ignore, you reclaim your rhythm. You stop dancing to someone else's emotional tune. You start to hear your own thoughts again, feel your own peace again, live your own life again. You stop begging to be understood and start understanding yourself. That power, quiet, unshakable, BRNE, sovereign power. So remember this, ignoring ISNT, punishment, preservation. It's choosing your peace over their validation. It's deciding that your emotional energy is too valuable to be wasted on inconsistency. You re not being cruel. You re being conscious. You re not withdrawing love yotigar and you re reclaiming balance. Because when you stop giving your energy to what drains you, you start attracting what fuels you. And that's when you'll realize the silence that once felt empty is actually the sound of your power returning. Reaction is the language of emotional dependency. The moment you stop reacting, the balance of power shifts not through aggression, not through silence, but through control. You see, most relationships are built on an unspoken exchange of validation. One person gives attention, the other absorbs it. One person chases, the other decides when to respond. It's a D and DR ans one that keeps the insecure feeling significant and the giver constantly drained. But when you stop reacting, the dance ends. The illusion breaks. And suddenly you see who was truly holding power and who was simply borrowing it from your emotional energy. When you stop reacting, you stop eating the dynamic. You cut the supply line of control. The person who thrived on your emotional responses begins to feel a void, not because you've left, but because your reactions once made them feel important. They needed your energy to affirm their relevance. Your emotions were their proof of impact. So when you go silent, when you stay calm, when you refuse to rise to provocation, you strip them of that false sense of power. That's when their true dependency is revealed. Most people think the one who shows less emotion is stronger. That's not true. The strongest person is in T, the one who hides emotion. The one who manages it. The one who can feel everything and still choose composure over chaos. Because reaction is instinct, restraint is mastery. Every time you resist the urge to defend, explain, or prove yourself, you regain another layer of control. You show that your peace is not negotiable. Your worth is not debatable and your energy is not for sale. People test your emotions to measure their influence over you. They say things, do things, disappear, return all to see how much control they still have. But once you stop reacting, they lose their mirror. They can no longer see their reflection in your pain. And that's when the truth becomes visible. They weren't confident, they were feeding on your reaction to feel powerful. Silence makes the insecure uncomfortable. Calmness makes the manipulative restless, because your stillness removes their leverage. They no longer use your emotions as evidence that they matter. They were forced to face their own emptiness, the one your validation once distracted them from. And that's what emotional maturity does. It reveals dependency, not through confrontation, but through absence. When you stop reacting, you beg ENBRN to understand that peace is not passive, it is active protection. You reprotecting your energy from being consumed by people who mistake attention for affection. You were no longer rewarding inconsistency with emotional investment. You were teaching people that your response is not a guarantee, it's a privilege. This is where your power grows quietly, because people who depended on your reactions will try to provoke you again with silence, with distance, with subtle digs. They'll want to test if your peace is real or temporary, but when you stay centered, when you refuse to play the emotional tug of war, they start to realize that the game is over. Not because they or energy becomes untouchable. In every dynamic, the emotionally reactive one loses power first, because reaction gives control away. It tells the other person, you still affect me. You still have access to my peace. But when you stop reacting, the message changes to, I am not available for chaos. That's when people start treating you differently. Respect replaces manipulation. Effort replaces testing, and if it doesn't, you walk away with your power intact. The beaut and DRY of non-reaction isn't T in indifference, it's S in awareness. It's S knowing exactly what's happening and still choosing not to engage. It's S strength wrapped in stillness. It's wisdom disguised as silence. You were not ignoring to win. You were choosing not to lose yourself. You were not detaching from care. You were detaching from control. And slowly, everything around you begins to shift. The people who only valued you for your reactions start to fade. The ones who appreciate your calm start to stay. The chaos that once drained you turns into peace that sustains you. Because you've learned the art of emotional redirection, choosing where your energy flows, not where it leaks. When you stop reacting, you start observing. You begin to see patterns clearly: who triggers you, why they do it, and how you used to respond. That awareness becomes your armor. It protects you from manipulation disguised a WCRNS love. You start to understand those people, Don T, want truth. They want control. And once they realize they can control your emotions anymore, their true intentions come to light. So when you stop reacting, Don T fear the silence that follows. That silence isn't T emptiness, it's exposure. It's revealing who genuinely values you and who only valued the attention you gave. It separates the real from the performative, the loyal from the opportunistic, because the one who controls their reaction controls their reality. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to explain to be and understood. You simply need to stay calm, focused, and aware. Let people reveal themselves through their discomfort with your peace, because when you stop reacting, you stop giving them power, and that's when you finally take yours back. So remember, your calm is your command. Your silence is you our shield. And your lack of reaction, that's not indifference, that S intelligence. Because the moment you stop reacting, the truth becomes clear: you were never the one who needed validation. They were.